Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, noon Eastern time, and you know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live, your weekly look at everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, recruitment, HR, and talent management. I'm your host, Devin Foster, and today I am joined by the handsome, the lovely John Harrington. John, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It feels, I know we have a Groundhog Day episode coming up, but it feels like Groundhog Day because I feel like we were just sitting here just a couple weeks ago having a very similar conversation. I'm excited to go even further with you on some of the topics we discussed in that last episode.
I'm excited too. And I'm really happy because I had found a dandelion and I blew on the dandelion and wished for another episode with John Harrington. And lo and behold, here you are. So dreams do come true. Keep wishing on your birthday candles and dandelions and everything in between. John, obviously this season is all around recruitment efficiency, and chatting about how recruiters can be more effective in their jobs, take some time away from some of that monotonous work that everyone is bogged down with, and focus on the candidates themselves. But before we get into that, of course, we have to pay the bills around here. Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the good folks at Phenom, whose purpose is, John, fill in the blanks here, to help a
billion people find the right job.
Nailed it. We didn't even rehearse that. He nailed it. I'm sure everyone is familiar with that. And we do that through our intelligent talent experience platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, just like Buzz Lightyear. Recruiters achieve next level productivity and efficiency, which is what we're talking about this season. And managers build better teams with data analytics and automation. Of course, all of this is done by super slick artificial intelligence and machine learning. If you're interested in learning more, head on over to phenom.com if you're interested. And while you're there, you may notice a little banner drops down from the top, almost like a push notification. Don't close that out. That is a registration for I Am Phenom, which is our annual conference. It is back after a brief hiatus, John. I'd call it a brief hiatus, coming in March 28th through the 29th. And if you sign up now, you can get our earliest bird special. So definitely check that out. As we know, the early bird gets the worm, but the earliest bird gets the cheapest I Am Phenom tickets. John, now that the bills are paid, let's get right into it. Today we're talking about recruiter efficiency and specifically AI scheduling. I want to ask you, if there was something similar to AI scheduling that you could apply to your everyday life, what would it be? What's something that you hate scheduling that you wish was just automatically done for you?
Oh man, I wish I could schedule my infant son's entire day to go a certain way, but things never go the way they're planned. So if there was some way I could just infuse some sort of automation or AI and wrap it around all the activity that we need to undertake and know that I can just rest assured things are going to get done and I don't need to worry about them, particularly the manual aspect of it, I'd feel a lot better about that than I do this week because I'm really in the throes of it.
I believe it. I have an infant daughter, or excuse me, an infant toddler daughter now. So I completely understand. Those schedules are haywire. John, wait till you start to do daycare and everything along those lines and COVID testing. It only gets better. I promise. Neither here nor there. If you at home wish that something could be scheduled like John's infant son's schedule, or my toddler daughter's schedule, I'd also love to get, quite frankly, hair appointments scheduled, John, because I hate blocking time. It's always awkward. You can't really pull out your phone and work while you're getting your hair cut. Since we have children at home, we can't really do it in the evenings because obviously that's time that we want to spend with our loved ones and our family members. So it is a challenge. So chime in, those of you who may be tuning in on your lunch break or early morning if you're joining us from the West Coast. But John, back to the regularly scheduled program. We're talking AI scheduling, and I want to ask you, is there a specific reason why you think this is pertinent now and at the beginning of the year in general?
Right. So I think we've talked about why we did this recruiter efficiency series of episodes, and it's really to educate around the before and after story that we not only know people aspire to see where it can go, but are actively trying to construct ways to get there. And in the context of a recruiter's day in the life, there's so many aspects of the job that are very time consuming, and they really do demand a lot of attention and prioritization and execution. And if you do it in combination and you look at all the different aspects, attracting candidates and sourcing them, engaging with them, getting them to take an action, fill out an application, or even start an application, or nudge them to complete an application, all these things are so critical. And what we see in the data is that if you're not refining your approach to it, you're missing out on the best talent. There's a majority of the candidates that are a good fit for the roles are also considering roles elsewhere. So why now? There's never been a more critical time to know that you're being as efficient with your time as possible. You're reducing the amount of pressure you're putting on yourself to jump through all the hoops and connect all the dots and make sure everyone's on the same page. And just knowing that there's utilities out there that can be afforded by AI and automation, and how that gets infused into the way that you work, it really does call to attention the need to figure out, okay, how do we just go from talking about it to actually doing it? What do you need to actually accomplish to get there? So that's really what we're hoping to go a little bit deeper on in this episode, is the approach you can take to make the scheduling aspect of your job that much easier. You have really qualified people at this point in the cycle. You need to connect with them, but the complexity is that there's so many different stakeholders that need to be organized, communicated with, and it's a very critical time because you have really qualified people, but you need to make sure that the people that are going to be speaking with them know what they need to say. You need to make sure that their busy day is being accounted for, their scheduling conflicts, the things that keep them very tied down and very busy and distracted are actually a blocker for you as a recruiter, getting them in front of the right people that they actually need to do their job better by having a bigger, better, stronger, and more capable team. So it creates this dynamic, and it's really powerful to see what automation can do to get the right people in the right room with the right resources and the right understanding around what's going to happen next in the evaluation process, and making sure it works for everybody. And I think that that's a big challenge right now. Calendars are always changing. People are double, triple, quadruple booked, and there's never a opportune moment anymore because there's so many moments all at the same time, and people have the element of choice to say, where am I going to be now? So I think from a recruiting perspective, staying on top of all of that and trying to make everything go as planned is almost looking like an impossibility unless you're taking an approach like we're getting a little bit of more exposure to today.
John, that resonated with me so much, and I want to share an example from my world now as a parent. I have tons of friends from college and folks like that who I used to hang out with all the time before I had a child. Now, trying to hang out with some of my buddies and my friends since they have children is almost impossible. We have swim lessons, we have daycare, we have extra work activities, all these things, and those are in our free time. So when you think about your daily schedule and reaching out to candidates, their lives are equally as chaotic. I know folks that block off lunch on their calendar because too many people were taking time over it. When you think about the traditional recruitment process, lunch was when people did interviews, right? Like they would sneak off into their car, whether their bosses knew it or not, and they would take phone calls from, prospective organizations reaching out to them and things like that. That free time's gone now. And to try and sort out a scheduling conflict when something can easily be double booked is a nightmare. So, John, I know we're going to talk about who benefits from AI scheduling. Obviously, the first thought there is recruiters. So I want to ask you, how do recruiters benefit from AI scheduling? And then also, how do the other parties involved benefit?
Right. So I'll focus on some of the main ones that you'll see in most scenarios, right? So a recruiter's an obvious one because they quarterback the entire process of defining what's going to be discussed in the interview, evaluating the candidates that have been surfaced for that setting, and making sure that expectations are set with the interview management team, the folks that are responsible for partaking in the interviews and doing the evaluations and arriving at decisions. So that on its own is where most of the time should be spent. Really making sure that that time is well spent, expectations are set, the resources that are going to be involved know their role. And that's where all the attention and time and investment should come from. But what actually happens without automation, without AI, is that they get encumbered with the day-to-day. When can you be where, at what time, and how does that overlap and fit with the other people that you need to speak with? And oh, by the way, how do we make sure that happens in an expedited fashion, noting that you're having conversations with other people at the same time about similar opportunities? It's really truly a race for the talent that's available at the moment in time that they're able to speak. So the sooner you can get that done, the better. What that ends up doing is creating a lot of pressure and putting a lot of stress on these teams, the recruiting teams, that could otherwise be spending a lot of time figuring out who's in the room. How do we make sure we really identify the aspects of what they're going to bring from a skills, competencies, proficiency perspective? How does that align with the requirements for the role? And do we really have the best person in the room here that can move into this role that we're trying to hire for? So that's an area where I think recruiters benefit a lot, is taking a lot of that time and manual effort out of the equation and allowing them to dial that in quite significantly compared to what they're normally doing across each interview that needs to take place. Hiring managers, they're busy. They have their day job that they have to do. Part of their job, it's necessary to have the right team, the right people, the right resources. So hiring is essential. However, it's just part of their role. So they're still going to have their day job. They're going to have all the meetings they're committed to and their priorities. They have deadlines. They're probably even behind on deadlines that they're committed to executing on while these interviews are taking place. And there are times when they can't make it, so they'll decline or they'll reschedule. It's on the recruiter again to figure out when is the next best time to get the candidate in the room to talk with them. So that's another challenge. And I think one of the areas automation plays a significant role here is the rescheduling, or if there's a cancellation, making sure that the calendars are being consulted and the right time is arrived at and specified without waiting for a human to intervene to actually come to that determination. No need for emails, checking with people, getting confirmation. It already knows and it already adjusts. So that's a critical piece as well. Another aspect of it that hiring managers and recruiters in combination benefit is that this is all supported by a consistent platform. So there's not siloed tools and technologies that hiring managers are using to assess candidates that they interviewed. They have a common user interface with these recruiters. So when they undertake these interviews, they're able to actually see in the platform, okay, this is what we had to say about this person. We're moving them to the next interviewer. We don't have to have a conversation about it. The data is right here at my fingertips and I can go, right? That goes back into the conversation around speed and streamlining the process. Candidates, you hear about it every day. I'm in an interview process. It's encumbering me with lots of meetings. I don't even know what the next step looks like. What you're doing is you're being very cognizant of their time, their preference to move fast, their understanding around communication. Where are we going next? And what role do I play? You're giving them a very good experience without any friction. So they're feeling satisfied as they go through the steps in the process to determine who am I interviewing with? Why am I in the room? Who am I speaking with? At what time? There's no ambiguity. It's very well known. So they walk out of the experience feeling like it went very fast, very efficient, just like you do when you want to go to a restaurant. You look at the local places on OpenTable, you find a seat at a table with your wife, you have a great dinner, and nothing went wrong because you didn't have to make a bunch of phone calls to figure out when you were going to go somewhere. You just found the right spot, the right place at the right time, and you went and you had a great experience. And that's what we're doing here, is we're creating great experiences for all of these practitioners and folks that are seeking great jobs.
Yeah, and I love the open table. I love a few of the examples that you shared. Number one, quarterback, describing a recruiter as that. And then open table. The only thing that could go wrong, John, and you'll experience this soon, is when your toddler decides it's not time to go out to dinner. And you can easily reschedule with open table, right? Find that next slot. One thing that I wanted to highlight was you mentioned speed there, speed for candidates, getting them through the funnel yesterday. I attended a webinar hosted actually live on LinkedIn from our CHRO, Jess Elmquist. He was joined by True Green, and they were talking about the talent market and how it looks today and how candidates are leveraging offers against one another. They may accept an offer and then start somewhere else and essentially ghost an organization. One way to avoid that is move faster through the process than anyone else. Get them scheduled, get all of those pieces automated where you're not playing phone tag, you're not going back and forth with adding folks, removing folks. just have it done automatically and let the candidate select when works best for them. Just like you would when you're scheduling a dinner, is what time works best for you. Personally, I go to bed early. Others may not. I'm going to look for those specific times, right? And we take those same commerce examples and apply them to the recruitment process, much like we did with our career site, John. I don't want to get off topic, but we stole from the best there to create the job application process. Moving on, getting back on schedule, pun intended there. At a high level, John, how does AI scheduling work? This is all good and well. It makes sense to me, but how is it all connected? How do we have access to potentially a candidate's calendar or a hiring manager? What does that look like?
Yeah, so customers who utilize our Phenom AI scheduling tool, they use it in conjunction with their existing investments from a calendar perspective. So it uses an API and it communicates and understands stakeholder involvement, their current commitments and obligations that they've already said yes to, and it gathers all that information, it aggregates it, and it finds literally the best time that works for everybody. And as I mentioned before, if someone says I can't do this anymore, it works in the background. You could be literally sleeping and wake up the next day and that problem's already been solved. So that's one of the beauties of it, is that it does a lot of that manual time consuming effort for you simply by knowing who's available when, who's a critical stakeholder to be involved in the interview process, and making sure that the meeting gets moved, communication makes its way to the right stakeholders, and everyone's expectations are set around what am I walking into and when with whom. So in a nutshell, that's how it works. And it's, again, centralized as a part of our recruiter experience on our Intelligent Talent Experience platform. So it's one of our core offerings that works in conjunction with a candidate relationship management tool. The ability, as we spoke about in last week's episode, to screen with video technology. So it works in conjunction with video assessments. Not to say that it requires you to use all of these things in combination, but the value add is that you have data flowing across each of them on this linear stage that you go through in the hiring process, where you have the right people, you've evaluated them, you've screened them, you want to move them forward, and now you're ready to schedule interviews with them. What happens in interviews, Devin? Conversations, more interpretations of who this person is. Are they the right fit? What am I documenting about them? And how does that information find its way to the right people at the right time so we can make decisions faster? So it's truly accelerating time to hire, cost to hire, because you're not bogging down your team and your resources as extensively as you normally do. Time is money. So it's an extremely beneficial process to get in place. And when you have these working in cohesion with one another, it's tremendously helpful. And so we've actually done some data analysis based on customers that have adopted, used, and started to derive benefits from their use of AI scheduling. And we're seeing that tens of thousands of hours are being saved, not just because of the combination of those things being working in conjunction with one another, literally independently from the use of AI scheduling on its own. Tens of thousands of hours. And the majority of interviews are being scheduled within an hour, more than 50% across many customers that we've evaluated across a diverse range of industries. Then you look at, okay, 24 hours. How many of them? Most of them have already been scheduled. So you're seeing that people are not only getting these fed to them as options to commit to, but they're accepting them. So the lack of need for a human to communicate, request availability, send out a manual notification and an invite, make sure everyone's RSVP'd for it. Those I'm listing on one hand. I'm almost on my second hand, all the things that someone needs to do just to have one interview scheduled. That's all taken care of. So it's pretty tremendously impactful. And again, it's something we're trying to get some more exposure out there for recruiters that are dealing with this every day.
Yeah. John, one thing that I want to mention, and I think you asked me what happens in interviews, and you said conversations. The one thing that I was going to say is nerves. People get nervous when they're on interviews. And I've been in this situation, and I'm sure someone else can relate. But when you're taking that final 2-3 minutes, when you're up against the clock, a candidate doesn't want to miss their next meeting that they squeezed this interview into. And it's like, let's look at calendars to figure out next steps. And you're nervous looking at your calendar and trying to find out and figure out if you can skip a meeting in order to make an interview or something along those lines. When that stress is removed, you have a list of dates and times that you can select within the hour. John said that most of these happen, and pick that time, and all of a sudden, boom, the interview is booked. There's no back and forth. There's no, that time won't work for me. How about Tuesday at 3? I can't do Tuesday. That's a nightmare, and it only builds. I'm getting anxious about it right now. I'm sweating, John, but it removes all of that process. But John, this is all good and well. I want to say that I enjoy chatting with you, but let's be honest, we're marketers at the end of the day, right? We're marketing. I want to hear it from a recruiter. And today we have a very special guest. We have Greg Chandler, who we didn't use the AI scheduling tool for, but he is a senior manager, executive recruiter who uses this every single day, uses AI scheduling every single day, joining the program to ask him a couple questions. John, I'm going to ask him the first question, but then I'm going to hand it over to you. Let's kick things off and bring Greg on the program.
Hello.
Greg, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm happy to have this conversation with you. I love talking with John. Don't get me wrong, but he's a marketer. You can only trust him so much. I'm kidding. He's fantastic. Greg, welcome to the program. I know this is your first time. If you're not familiar with the show, no one gets on the program without answering the icebreaker question. So I have to ask you, leveraging AI scheduling every day as you do from a recruitment perspective, what is one tool that you wish you could schedule in your everyday life the same way you use AI scheduling?
Ooh, in everyday life. You know what? If I could use AI in scheduling, I'd love it for home maintenance. Just, I'd love it if you woke up in the morning, it was automatically scheduled to say, hey, you had a leaky pipe overnight. That's okay. Someone's already on their way to fix it for you. You don't have to worry about it. Go on with your day.
That would be wonderful. And then you don't have to look at your calendar and say, oh, I have an interview that day with a high priority candidate. I don't need drilling in the background or somebody blasting music. It's like, let me look at your calendar. Oh, this time works. We'll send a plumber out there for you. John, I'll hand it over to you for the next question.
Yeah, I think one of the good things to get started with and just understanding your experience is just the length of time that you've gone from where you were in your scheduling process, probably much like what many of the listeners today are experiencing, to where you are now. So how long have you been taking a more sophisticated approach to scheduling?
Yeah, so I've been using AI scheduling for just over a year now with Phenom. And prior to that, just like you mentioned, I was definitely doing it, I'll call it the old school way before, of everything being manual. So I'm loving the transition.
I have to ask you, Greg, do you view using AI scheduling almost in the same sense of when we have regular conversations pre 2020 and post 2020, right? Kind of a significant date and time. Do you look at your recruitment experience and say, oh, that was pre interview scheduling, AI scheduling, and now I have post and my life is easier? Is that accurate to say?
I just try to forget the pre 2020 piece altogether, and I just focus on where we are now because it's that much better.
That's awesome. Now I have to ask you, obviously using it for recruiters is great. It makes your day easier, but how do candidates feel about it? Because at the end of the day, we're working for them. John likened recruiters to quarterbacks. Your receivers are candidates. How do they feel about using this tool?
Yeah, no, I'd say most of the feedback that I get from candidates is they love it, and more so that they love the flexibility around it. They love that. I can send them the scheduler link. They don't feel pressured. They don't have to wait for a call from me or worry about when they're going to email me back. It's just I send the note out, and whenever they get that time, regardless of where they are, they click a few buttons, and that meeting will be booked. It happens all the time. I'll send out some notes on a Monday, and by the end of that day, I already have all my meetings booked for the next day from the candidates.
That's awesome. John, I hand it back over to you.
Yeah, another aspect that Devin, before he beamed you into the combo, we were chatting about stakeholders and all the intricacies between candidates and recruiters and hiring managers. And one of the questions I was curious to get your input on is intuitiveness, like how user friendly is this, and what about the different types of stakeholders that you encounter from a seniority perspective or different levels throughout the organization, have you found that it's universally applicable and everyone gets on board with it? Or have you had any scenarios where it's different for different types of stakeholders in terms of adoption and use and benefiting across that range of stakeholders?
Yeah, no, I'd say everyone loves to save time and loves ease of use. So I'd say it's definitely universal in terms of the stakeholders. And even here at Phenom, been using it for about a year now, and I've used it across all stakeholders for roles from executives to entry level positions and everything in between. And I think it has again a similar impact just in terms of that flexibility and that ease of use for the candidate to really help them out in their day.
Greg, I'm going to play agent of chaos here because I'm sure this has come up in your daily life. But those last second schedule changes that John and I talked about at the top of the program, maybe a candidate has a meeting with their boss, something comes up, they have to pick somebody up from daycare, whatever the case may be, they can't make the interview. How easy is that process for you to reschedule? Is it simply sending out a new invite? What does that look like from your perspective? And how much easier is that rather than playing phone tag when somebody sends you an email maybe 5 minutes before an interview that's I can't make it?
It's really easy, and I love it from the recruiter side. I would say it's easy regardless of who has to cancel and all those last minute things. They come up, they happen for candidates or managers. All they have to do realistically is they just hit one button on their calendar, and then that meeting goes away, notifies both the manager, the candidate, and the recruiter all at the same time that the meeting's been canceled, and then it's going to be rescheduled. And then if you're the candidate canceling that meeting, you don't even have to get a new link. You just click on your calendar and you'll be able to adjust it right from there once you cancel that meeting. So it all happens pretty quickly, just like when you scheduled the original meeting. And most times I would say there's definitely still some chaos when you get that last minute cancellation, but what it helps with is just eases that pain in terms of don't have to follow up with the recruiter or the manager and figure out all these other pieces on when you're going to reschedule. At least you get that calm of it's okay, the meeting's going to be rescheduled and it's going to happen pretty quickly.
We were talking about that before you joined, and we're not even doing the job. We just know that that's something that is stressful, and it creates a lot of tension and it creates a lot of anxiety in a process where the focus really should be on who do we have here? What is the goal for the meeting? What are we going to get out of it? How are we going to come together and align around next steps? And so eliminating that need to encumber people with those thoughts or feelings or having them weigh in again about when they can make it work, it just, I would imagine, makes your life and their lives so much easier. So the process feels so much better.
No, absolutely. Especially if your company's in a global environment and you're scheduling meetings in different time zones. If I schedule a meeting right now for some of our colleagues in Europe, maybe they're going to have the meeting when I'm not available. I don't have to worry if they do have to cancel last minute about them trying to find me or me trying to find them to figure it out. Again, it'll just be automated, so it just really helps making everything easy from there.
Yeah, no, it absolutely has to. One question that I want to ask you, Greg, is we talk so much about artificial intelligence and really removing the mundane tasks from your daily life. I want to ask you, where do you add the human element to your daily job with some of these tasks removed? Do you say in the interview, hey, I'm going to send over an automated scheduling service that we use to pick a time? If there's a last second conversation, do you shoot or a last second change, excuse me, do you shoot over a personalized email? Do you pick up the phone and call? What does that look like where you can kind of take that talent advisor role and take it that next step because you have a tool like this, which is going to save you some time?
Yeah, so I would say the AI, really I view it as a complement to the human element. It's really helping to take that, again, those mundane tasks and, allows the recruiter to really reinvest that time into really focusing on that human element. So if we have all that time that I don't have to schedule all those interviews anymore, I can really be more precise in when I follow up with them, what we talk about, and again, going back to worrying about the details of how my interaction is going to impact that candidate experience and just making sure we're staying on top of that versus having to worry about when we're going to get them scheduled with the hiring manager or are their calendars going to align.
Yeah, that makes sense. John, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to one of the things we talked about earlier because it piqued my interest. But I was wondering, I know you talked about your experience going from pre 2020 to the now more modernized new way of doing things and your experience with that and your sentiment around it. I'm curious to know if you've noticed a difference on the stakeholders outside of the recruitment context, the candidate side, the hiring managers, decision makers throughout an interview process. What sentiment have you detected exists in that before state and after state? Do you feel like there's recognition or acknowledgement around the streamlined nature of the process, the time savings, the lack of back and forth? Is there any sentiment on your side that you can kind of bring into this conversation that allows us to really, beyond just the numbers and the data that we have to demonstrate the impact this has, what are you hearing or feeling from the way these conversations go at this critical stage in the hiring process from other stakeholders?
Yeah, so I'd say especially upfront and when we're trying to first connect with the candidates, a lot of the sentiment I get is just, wow, that was great. It was fast, it was easy, and speed, to getting to the candidates, especially in a market like this, is critical. So just making sure there aren't too many barriers for them always comes across as being, a huge win for the organization and for me as a recruiter of being again to really get to the point on where we need to be and have that conversation together. And before this, again, I would say it really slowed down a lot of those pieces of today. I can give a live example. This morning I came in, I shortlisted 5 candidates for a role, sent them all our scheduling links so we could connect and chat. Within about 20 minutes, I think 4 of the 5 were already scheduled for tomorrow with them. And so before, I guess you were calling it pre-2020, that probably would have taken me a little bit more work in the day, and would have taken probably till the end of the day to connect with all those candidates and get on the phone with them and say, hey, when can we chat? Or send that email and say, when's a good time to connect early next week? So all that is taken away and just, again, really streamlines and increases that speed.
No, I love that because I have a recruitment background and I remember having an open requisition and setting up my list. I had a legal pad in front of me and I would say I would have to call John, I have to call Greg, I have to call Sally, I have to call Justin, and check them off throughout the day as I got them scheduled. It never happened in 20 minutes, Greg. I'm going to let you in on the secret. Not once. And it gave me anxiety throughout the day. I want to ask you from a personal perspective. I know a lot of folks perhaps set up their days differently, right? Some people are morning people. They'd like to get their interviews done in the morning. Some recruiters are more afternoon folks. They need their second or third cup of coffee before they get into the thick of it of back-to-back interviews. Do you set up your day any specific way with this tool where it allows you to exclusively book interviews in the afternoon or in the morning, middle of the day? And has that helped you be more efficient long term?
Yeah, so I'd say there's 2 ways that the AI scheduling, in terms of how you can set it up, because we can set it up at a company level and, we can tell the organization, not just for the recruiters, but for the hiring managers, these are the time parameters on when we want, the AI scheduling to book meetings. So if we said we only want those meetings to happen between 9 and 4, let's say, we can do that. And then if there's times outside of that that you want to book other things, that's great. But also at the recruiter level, at the individual side, when I'm sending out those notifications, I can customize some of those timeframes too. So maybe I'm going to be away for a couple of days, or I have a couple offsite meetings I know I need to prepare for. I could make sure that candidates, are aware of that just by, really sending them customized times to say, here are some slots where I think would be best for, us to have that conversation together. So it gives that flexibility to the candidate, but back to the recruiter too. Or if so a lot of times that I do just block things off my calendar, like sourcing. So just having time in your calendar to really make sure you're getting focused time to work on some of those other things that you need to do. And once you have those meetings blocked in your calendar, the scheduler will just automatically avoid that, won't take that time up, and that it's only going to take the time that you've given it within your parameters.
Makes sense. I have to ask, have you ever come across a situation where a candidate's responded and said, none of these times work for me? Right? Is that ever happened in the year that you've been using AI scheduling? And how do you kind of solve that problem?
Yeah, no, it definitely has, especially if you have a hiring manager who is really busy, or maybe they're going on vacation and again they're going to be away for a week, and it just comes back and says, "Hey, they're not available." Usually, what will happen is it'll come back to the recruiter and the candidate, and it'll say, "You know what? We're going to offer you some new dates and times. Here are some new options," and maybe look a little bit further out. Or as the recruiter, I'll be notified anyways. I could go back in and look at that a little bit more and try to work with the manager and say, hey, you know what, you might need to free up your calendar a little bit more to make some time for these interviews. And then they might adjust a few things, and then it will automatically go back out to the candidate and offer up that new time for them.
That's all. I mean, it sounds like from this morning, right? You reached out to 5 candidates that you've shortlisted. If you only have to chase down one of them for a specific time, that sounds like a win in my book. To bring back the John analogy of quarterback, if you're completing 80% of your passes, you might win a Super Bowl. That's super efficient to use that sports analogy. I know it's playoff season. I get caught up in the NFL, Greg. I apologize. John, any other questions that you may have for Greg while we have him before we beam him out and he gets back to his regularly scheduled program?
I would just say, Greg, if you could just share with those listening in that are in the pre-U, not the current U setting of a recruiter that's using AI and automation to schedule an interview and make decisions with candidates at this critical stage, what would you share with them? Like what sentiment do you have now that you're on the other side, and where can you help shape the perspective that this is within reach for people that may not be using it every day?
Yeah. Make the change and don't look back. No, I'm just kidding. So I would say, the sentiment I would say is, from a recruiter side, we're talking about automating, but what we really haven't focused on is just, the ease of use for the recruiter, not for one candidate, but for all candidates. So when you're working on something, it's not just automating this for one person and one individual, but again, this is going to be across the board, across all your roles that you're working on. So you really need to think about that from, that next level of, okay, I have 15 jobs maybe that I'm working on times maybe, 5 candidates per job. You've just saved all those emails and all that time, again, across all those roles that you're working on. So it's just taking it to that next level of, wow, I'm really going to get to really invest that time into things back into what I really love to do in terms of recruitment.
Yeah, and to that point, it syncs within the CRM, right? So let's say, Greg, you're out for a day, you get sick, whatever the case may be. Somebody can log in and they don't have to look at your calendar to see where things are. They can already see where these candidates are scheduled, whose Zoom link they're going to meet on, whether it's Google Meet, Microsoft Teams. Everyone has a different one all the different time, but it's all synced within that CRM. So I think that's super powerful. Any final thoughts that you'd like to add? Anything that John and I may have missed as marketers, since we are not in the daily grind of recruiters like you are?
No, I think that's great. Like I said, the focus of just, again, the ease of use, the flexibility, and the time management is really the core of it, and I love it. Again, never go back.
Awesome. Greg, thank you so much. Scotty, beam Greg out of here. Scotty's Justin Devitt. He's the one pulling the ones and twos. Neither here nor there. John, thank you so much for joining. Greg, thank you for joining. I know you're probably still backstage right now. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, this season is all around recruiter efficiency. Last week, we talked about video assessments. The week before, John and I talked about a press release that just came out talking about AI scheduling and video assessments in combination. These episodes were kind of double clicking into them, getting a little bit deeper, having conversations with recruiters. So if you missed any of this, fear not. It'll be replaying on LinkedIn all day long, or you can hop over to YouTube and check it out there. If you want to wait a little bit, there is a version that comes out on our blog on a weekly basis. So definitely check that out for past episodes as well. There, within that blog, they have short little clips and snippets of good talking points that you could probably send over to your boss if you're making a case for video assessments and or AI scheduling. John, I want to thank you so much. Next week, we have Sasser. We're going to be joined by Bradley Cooper. Not that Bradley Cooper, but an equally as important Bradley Cooper, I will tell you. And then the following week, I know we're going to be joined by Circle K. So exciting things. Set those reminder. John, thank you so much for joining today. Anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, I would just encourage everyone that's in this mindset of what can I do better in the new year? How can I improve my processes? If you missed our previous episodes, go back and roll the tape, get some exposure to where we started this conversation, and don't forget to join the ones that are coming up, because I think you'll walk away with some real actionable steps you can take in your own life and the way you approach your job that aren't so far from your reach, and also can really put you in a Greg-like state where you say, I don't really ever want to go back to the old way of doing things. So that's the whole point of this. And we're really excited to be able to bring this content and these perspectives to you as an audience to really make sure that you're taking full advantage of some of these newer approaches. So that would be where I would end things here today. But, let's continue and keep this going. It's great momentum to start the year with.
Yeah, from here on out, I'm no longer using when I'm in a flow state. I am going to say when I'm in a Greg-like state, because he has everything figured out. And as we think about our New Year's resolutions and we're getting towards the end of January, some people may be falling behind. Leveraging some of this AI and automation to get back to those goals is one way that you'll find tremendous success. Definitely check out more at phenom.com, as well as while you're there, register for I Am Phenom. Earliest bird special out right now. It's IamPhenom.com or Phenom.com. Click the banner. John, thank you so much for joining. You're not going to be here next week, but I'm going to keep wishing on it, and we'll get you back on the program, I promise. But have a great weekend. Yes, have a great weekend. Special shout out to Greg once again, and thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everyone.